Guys, why did a woman's bra silence the elders and make 3 women almost faint at once? That particular morning, the village square was full of voices. People were sitting on plastic chairs under the mango tree. The elders were already talking about land problems, palm wine sharing, and the missing church bell. Chickens were walking around. Children were playing in the dust, and the sun was bright like it had something to prove. Then she came, Adaeze. She was walking slowly from the footpath behind the old chief's hut. Her steps were calm and her eyes were forward. She was not smiling, but she was not angry either. Her red blouse was shining in the sun, and her pointed bra, sharp like twin cones, was standing tall under her fabric. People stopped talking. 3 women sitting at the side, Chidinma, Ugochi, and Nneka, gasped so loudly that a lizard ran away from the wall. All 3 of them grabbed their heads with both hands, like they just saw a ghost wearing lipstick. "What is that?" Ugochi whispered, blinking fast. "Jesus! Is she hiding catapult under her shirt?" Chidinma said, shaking her legs. "It's not ordinary," Nneka added. "That bra has a spirit." Even the elders paused. Chief Adaeze had been speaking about boundary lines, but his mouth was suddenly open and silent. The palm wine cup in his hand started shaking. One of the younger elders coughed and looked at the ground, pretending to be serious, but his eyes kept peeping up. Adessa kept walking. Her hips were moving with quiet confidence. Her shoulders were relaxed. She passed the women like she didn't hear them. She walked past the shrine tree, past the staring boys, and straight into the center of the meeting. And when she finally stopped, her pointed chest was facing the entire council like it had its own voice. They were all still staring. And in that moment, somebody's spirit whispered, "They thought they buried that kind of woman years ago. But she was back, and she came with a style." Welcome to my channel. Adaeze was not always this bold, and she didn't always wear pointed bras that shook a whole village. She was once just a quiet girl with big eyes and a fast brain. Her parents died in a road accident when she was just 9 years old. That day, her world changed like someone turned off the sun. She was sent to live with her mother's older sister, Auntie Urena, a woman who believed that silence was discipline and smiling too much was a sign of loose character. Auntie Urena made Adaeze wake up at 4 a.m. to sweep the compound and say her morning prayers. She said a woman must be soft in voice and stiff in morals, but Adaeze was growing. She was curious. She was always watching, always wondering why people acted like women were meant to hide. By the time she was 16 years old, she had already been called too stubborn, too fast, too modern, just because she asked questions and didn't like being told "because I said so." Then one Sunday, Auntie Urena caught her sketching a drawing of a blouse that hugged the body tight, with sharp curves at the chest. "What is this nonsense?" she shouted, holding the paper like it was poison. Adessa was shaking. "It's just a design. I saw it in a magazine." Auntie Urena tore it into tiny pieces and said, "If you stay here, this house will catch fire. I am sending you to Lagos. Let them help you clean this wildness." And so, Adessa was put in a bus to Lagos. No goodbye hug, just a bag of clothes and a warning. "If you return home with shame, don't enter my compound." Lagos was noisy, Lagos was movement, and Lagos was freedom. At first, Adessa was lost. The buildings were tall, the people were fast, and her mouth could not keep up. But she kept watching, she kept learning. She found a job cleaning at a small fashion shop owned by a woman named Madame Remy. While sweeping, she would pick at the sewing machine and the fabrics. She loved how clothes were made, how they changed shape, and how they made people feel proud. Madame Remy noticed her interest and said one day, "Come sit here, let me show you something." That day, Adaeze touched the sewing machine. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was dancing. Weeks turned into months, and Adessa was learning fast. She started designing, cutting, and even helping customers choose styles. And one day, she saw a photo of a woman wearing something strange, a bra that looked like it could poke someone if they got too close. It was called a bullet bra. Adessa laughed at first, but she couldn't stop looking. The shape was wild, it was sharp, and it was beautiful. And it looked like power. She whispered to herself, "One day, I will make one with my own hands." And she did. She made it in red color. Not soft red, but bold red. The kind of red that didn't say sorry. When she wore it for the first time in front of the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. Her chest was lifted. Her back was straight. Her eyes looked braver. For the first time in years, Adaeze felt like she was not trying to hide. She didn't just wear that bra. She stood inside. So, when she heard that her cousin was getting married back in the village, she packed her bag. She didn't bring many things, but she brought the red blouse, the jeans that hugged her shape, and the bullet bra. She didn't come back to explain herself. She came back to own space, to walk where her mother once walked, to sit where women were told to kneel, and to show every girl hiding in shame that their body was not a curse. Chidinma was the first to speak. She was already sitting on the edge of her plastic chair, fanning herself with a church program when she saw Adaeze walking towards the meeting. She dropped her hand fan. "Ugochi, Neka, are you seeing what I'm seeing?" she asked, blinking like something entered her eyes. Ugochi turned her head, then grabbed her own chest like someone was attacking it. "Hey, what is this?" Chidinma was already standing. Her voice was rising. "Bra, we get corner like catapult. In this village." Neka didn't talk at first. She just stared. Then she leaned forward, squinting hard. "My sister, that thing is not normal. That chest is pointing like compass needle." All three of them stood now, hands on heads, talking over each other. "She's coming to spoil our girls. She's wearing it with confidence. See how it's standing like small touches under her blouse." The people around them were trying not to laugh. One old man coughed into his wrapper, just to cover the smile on his face. But the three women were not laughing at all. They were angry, shocked, and full of holy fire. "We can't allow this," Chidinma said. "She wants to open the door for Jezebel's spirit," Ugochi added. "Let's go and report her," Neka said, already picking up her handbag. And just like that, the three of them started marching towards the church, as if God himself was waiting at the altar for their news. They didn't even wait for the meeting to end. They were talking as they walked, with their wrappers swaying and their slippers slapping the dusty ground. Imagine. She didn't even wear a scarf to cover it, and she walked straight into the elders' circle, like she was sent by the governor. They reached the church and knocked hard on the wooden door. The assistant pastor's wife opened it, surprised. "Please," Chidinma said, still breathing fast, "we have seen something that can bring thunder to this village." Ugochi added, "A girl had returned from Lagos with chests like sharp weapons, and she's shaking it at the elders in front of our husbands." The pastor's wife raised her eyebrow. "You mean she fought someone?" "No," Neka answered. "She wore a bra that's pointing like witch's horn." Ha! The pastor's wife stared at them, confused for a moment, but as they described it more, with hands moving and wide eyes, she finally said, "This one needs prayers, so real prayers." They nodded together, like women on a mission. But as they walked back home after their complaint, Neka was very quiet. She wasn't speaking like before. She was remembering something. A moment from long ago when she was just 21 years old and visiting her cousin in Port Harcourt. One night, her cousin showed her a strange pointy bra. It was soft but shaped like a small mountain. They giggled and whispered like children playing with secrets. Nneka had tried it on that day. She stood in front of the mirror and she remembered how it made her feel. Not bad, not evil, but powerful. She had felt taller. Her back had stood straighter. She had smiled with her teeth. But then she remembered her mother's voice warning her about pride. So she removed it quickly and never spoke of it again. Now, as Chidinma and Ugochi were planning a village meeting to ban that kind of dressing, Nneka was just nodding quietly. She wasn't sure if she was angry or jealous or just afraid of the feeling that was waking up inside her again. It wasn't long before they all gathered for the village meeting. The village square was still quiet. After Adaeze walked in, even the birds in the tree seemed to pause. Then Chief Anozie cleared his throat and stood up slowly. "This is not ordinary," he said. "Let her come to the center and explain herself very well." The elders nodded. Some women in the back whispered, "Yes, let her talk. Let her explain why she came dressed like that." One elder banged his walking stick on the ground and shouted, "She will speak for herself." Everyone turned to look at Adaeze, but she was not afraid. She stepped forward calmly. Her legs were not shaking. Her chin was high. Her eyes were steady. She looked at all of them one by one. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She just stood there. The sun was still shining, and the wind was playing with the hem of her blouse. Her red top was still firm on her body, and the bullet bra underneath was still standing proud, like two small heels refusing to bend. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She's bold though," but Adaeze was not listening to their noise. She was hearing something else, a memory. That night in Lagos, she was sewing alone. The shop had closed, and Madame Remy had gone home. Adaeze stayed behind, sitting at the old machine with a soft red fabrics in her laps. She was cutting carefully. She was stitching slowly. Her hands were moving like they were dancing. The lamp beside her was buzzing, but she didn't care. She was focused. She was creating. She made the two cups sharp and strong. She added tiny inner stitches so the chest would stay lifted. Then she held it up to the light and smiled. "This is not just a bra," she whispered to herself. "This is my armor." She wore it in the mirror and turned side to side. She saw herself standing like a warrior, not a servant. She didn't know if the world would like it, but she knew she did, and that was enough. With all these memories back in the village square, Adaeze opened her mouth to speak. "Elders," she began. Her voice was clear. "I know I look different. I know you have never seen a blouse like mine. But I came here to show my face, not to hide it. I came to stand, not to kneel." People were shifting in their seats. Some were frowning, some were listening. Adaeze continued. "You cover your heads with scarf," she said, looking at the women. "And you say it is respect." She looked at the men. "You wear big agbada with gold, and you say it is honor." She touched her chest gently. "Well, I shape my chest, and I say it is pride." "Ha!" Gasp flew through the crowd. She was still speaking. "You use clothes to cover your shame. I use clothes to cover my strength. What is the difference if both are symbols?" Some mouths dropped open. A baby cried somewhere. A woman stood up and sat down again. Ha! One elder shook his head slowly and said, "This girl has mouth too." Adaeze didn't stop talking. She pointed to the girl sitting in the corner. "They are watching me now. Tomorrow, they will grow up. Will they also be told to hide, or will they be allowed to stand?" She folded her arms, still standing tall. "I came back here not to beg. I came back to belong." And then she was quiet. The wind passed through the square again, and for the first time in many years, no one had a quick answer. For a long time after Adaeze finished speaking, nobody said a word. People were looking at each other, hoping someone else would talk first. Even Chief Adaeze was rubbing his chin slowly, as if waiting for wisdom to land on his shoulder. Then, from the third row, where the elder women were sitting, a chair moved back. One woman stood up. It was Auntie Ejike. She was one of the oldest women in the village. Her voice was soft, but her presence was strong. She always tied her scarf tight and wore her glasses on a string like a school teacher. Most people thought she only spoke during funerals or family land fights. But that day, she stood. She didn't shout. She didn't wave her hands. She just reached up and removed her headscarf. The whole square went quiet again. Because under that scarf, on the side of her neck was a tattoo. It was faded now, but still very clear enough. It looked like a small moon with 3 lines under it, like a secret mark from another time. Children squinted. Some elders gasped. One woman even whispered, "Ah, tattoo?" But Auntie Ejike was already turning slowly to face the crowd. She said, "I know many of you are shocked. That's fine. I have been hiding this for many years." She took a deep breath and her voice became a little stronger. In 1960, when Nigeria got independent, I was just 19 years old that year. We felt free. We wore our wrappers low on the waist. We let our back breathe. We danced on the road when the soldiers passed. And we sang songs that made our mothers cover their ears. The crowd was listening. I remember one wrapper I had, red and orange, with silver bead on the edge. When I walked in it, people turned their heads and I didn't feel ashamed. I felt alive. She smiled for a moment, remembering, but then the rules started. Her smile faded. Little by little, they told us to cover more. They said a quiet woman is a good woman. They said a loud woman is a broken woman. And so we started shrinking. Some heads were nodding now. Some of the older women were blinking fast. I tied scarf after scarf every day, Auntie Ejike said, until I forgot the shape of my own head. I folded my wrapper higher and higher, until I could barely breathe. She looked at Adaeze standing strong. "This girl," she said, her voice shaking just a little, "reminds me of who I was before shame found me." Adeze's eyes softened. The square was silent again, but this time it was not because of shock. It was because people were thinking. A few young girls looked at each other and smiled quietly. One woman clapped once before her husband held her hand down. A boy in the back whispered, "I didn't know Auntie Ejike was like that before." Auntie Ejike turned back to her chair. She didn't speak again. She didn't have to. She had already opened a door that had been closed for so long. After the village meeting, people could not stop talking. Adaeze's speech had gone straight into their ears and hearts, and it was causing small fires everywhere. But not everyone was clapping. The pastor's wife, Mama Nkechi, was very angry. She said Adaeze had brought a spirit of pride and temptation into the village. She stood on the church altar one Sunday and shouted into the microphone, "We must pray. We must cast out the demon of pointed brows before it spread." The women shouted amen and clapped, but some of them were only pretending. They were curious too. Still, nobody wanted to look weak. They joined the prayer, rarely with serious faces and loud voices. That week, the prayer group met every evening. They held hands and marched around the village square. Mama Nkechi wore her strongest perfume and carried her Bible like a weapon. She shouted, "Every chest lifted by evil fashion must fall flat in Jesus' name." People laughed behind her back, but some believed her, and fear started to grow. Adessa was walking to the market one morning to buy threads when a woman selling pepper blocked her path. "You are not welcome here," the woman said. Others joined her. The fabric seller turned her face away. The fruit woman refused to give Adaeze change. By the time Adaeze reached the end of the row, her eyes were stinging. She had done nothing wrong, but she was being treated like a criminal. Then something worse happened. A mother, walking with 2 teenage daughters, stopped in front of her. "You stay away from my girl," she shouted. Before Adaeze could speak, the woman slapped her. The sound echoed. Even the ghost stopped walking. You are corrupting our daughters with your Lagos spirit, the mother shouted again. Adaeze held her face. But she didn't cry, she didn't run. She just turned and walked away slowly, one step at a time. She was hurting, but she was also thinking, and that night, something surprising happened. As the moon was rising and the village was quiet, a knock came at Adaeze's window. She opened the curtain. 3 girls were standing outside, wearing plain wrappers and covering their faces with shawl. Please, one of them whispered, we are sorry for what they did today. Another girl stepped forward. Her voice was shaking. Can you show us how to make that bra? Adaeze looked at them for a moment, then she smiled. The next weekend, Adaeze gathered her things and went to the river. She didn't want trouble, so she didn't use the church or the market square. She just carried her sewing machine, a small stool and some red fabric. She sat under a mango tree beside the water and waited. At first, no one came. She was sewing slowly, the machine humming like an insect. The wind was moving her hair, and birds were singing in the trees. She didn't stop. She kept sewing and hoping. Then 1 girl came, then 2, then 4, and before an hour passed, 10 women were sitting around her. Some young, some old, all curious. They were watching her hand as she cut the fabric and shaped the cups. She showed them how to use soft cotton and thin wires. She explained how to fit the bras to their own body, not to please others, but to feel strong inside. As she walked, she was talking. She said, your body is not a mistake. It is a story, and clothes should not hide your story. They should help you tell it. The women were nodding. Some were crying quietly. Others were smiling for the first time in days. By the next weekend, more women came. Some brought their own needles. Some brought their daughters. Even a few men came, standing far away at first, just watching. One man stepped forward slowly. He was holding his cap in both hands. My daughter wants to learn, he said, his voice low. I didn't understand it at first, but maybe we are scared because we never asked what they wanted. Adaeze nodded and gave him a chair. The gathering by the river grew every weekend. They didn't call it a fashion class. They just called it sitting near Adaeze. But what they were doing was more than sewing. They were healing, they were remembering, and they were becoming new. It had been 3 months since Adaeze first walked into the village square with her pointed bra. 3 months since the market banned her, since the girls knocked on her window, and since the river became a place of quiet change. Now, the village was different. People were still whispering, but their whispers had changed. Some were saying, she's not so bad. Others were saying, she's teaching our daughters to be bold, not rude. Even some of the elders were asking questions, not to fight, but to understand. So when the next village meeting was called, everyone was waiting to see one thing. Would Adaeze come? And if she came, what would she wear this time? The day was hot again, the sun was high, and the chairs were already full. The elders were sitting in a long row, their canes resting beside them. Children were playing near the mango tree. The women were fanning their faces with old newspapers. Then Adaeze arrived. She was wearing a plain blue dress, no shine, no bright colors, no pointed bras, but somehow she still looked powerful. Her back was straight, her steps were calm, her chin were lifted. She wasn't trying to shake the ground this time. She had become the ground. When Chief Adaeze saw her, he nodded slowly. He tapped the table once and said, let her speak. Adaeze stepped into the middle. She didn't clear her throat. She didn't shout. She just looked at them and started talking. Her voice was soft, but it carried. She said, my chest didn't break this village. Your fear did. The air went still. No one moved. She continued, you blame my bra, but it was your own thinking that needed teaching. You thought I came to fight you. I came to find myself. She pointed to the girl sitting at the edge. These ones, they are watching. If we tell them to always cover, to always bow, to always hide, one day they will forget how to stand. She smiled then, a soft smile, a knowing smile. I will not wear the red blouse today. I don't need it, because now I know something louder than shape, and that is my voice. She turned to leave and then clap. One girl clapped, then another. Soon, the younger women were clapping with both hands. Some stood up, even two elders nodded slowly, as if their old bones were starting to agree. The pastor's wife didn't clap, she just held her bag tighter. But she didn't stand to protest either. Adaeze walked past them all. She wasn't rushing, she was walking like someone who had already arrived. And as Adaeze walked away that day, her chest was no longer the sharpest thing in the room, but her voice was. So guys, they say the body is the first thing people see. But what if it was the first thing people respected? Adaeze did not wear a pointed bra to shock the world. She wore it because she had a chest, she had a body, she had a shape, and shape is not shame. In every village, in every town, in every family, girls are being told to shrink, to sit small, to hide their softness, to lower their laughter, to cover their chest like it's a crime. But your body is not a problem. Your body is a home, and nobody should be made to feel like their home is something to be covered in fear. Some people will not understand. That's okay. Some will whisper, some will laugh, some will try to change you with their eyes. But one day, one girl will see you standing, and because of you, she will stand too. That's how body confidence spreads. Not by shouting, not by showing. And so, if your back is bent from carrying shame, straighten it. If your chest is hiding out of fear, lift it. Not to please the world, but to tell the world, I was made well. So tell me guys, will you ever consider a bullet bra? Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to share this story with your family and your friends whom I love to see them. Till I see you again in my next story. Goodbye.